Hello and welcome. Today we're going to do a bit of rambling and talk about a mystery, and I'm hoping that by putting this out there, at some point somebody may know the answer to the question. We're going to have first a little bit of history here. Let me back up. I have a set on the $10 test bench right now that I'm working on, and there'll be a complete video on that later. But the output was a 6B5, which is a dual triode output tube. And that's this tube. This is the 6B5 dual triode. And looking at the schematic, I said, gee, that looks an awful lot like a 6N6. There's the 6N6. The 6N6 is an octal tube, also a dual triode output tube. Turns out these two tubes are identical electrically and just about physically. A little different, in the manufacturing process here. They are the same tube. This is simply the 6B5 with an octal socket put on it and rebadged as a 6N6. And we'll talk about these more in detail in a couple of minutes and how this led me down the road to put this video up. So I'm going to set these safely aside for the moment. Excuse me, my morning congestion here. I was at the New England Vintage Electronics Flea Market in Nashua, New Hampshire. That's a club here in New Hampshire, and they repair and trade in old radios. And I happened to be at the venue in Nashua. They have one in Brookline, New Hampshire. They move around over the course of the summer. I bought a radio from a guy, and to be honest, I can't remember which radio of all the ones that have crossed my bench it was. But while I was chatting with him, he said, do you want this radio? And this is the condition it was in. The veneer was falling off, the cabinet was split, pieces of wood were falling off. It was in terrible condition. But he was offering it to me for free, and it had all its tubes in it. And I said, if nothing else, I thought, I can get some parts out of it. But I said, sure, and I said, I'll see what I can do with it. And he said, he told me, I can't find any information on this company. He said, they made transformers and a bunch of other stuff, he said, but I can't find any schematics. And it's just your typical all-American, 5 and 6 tube radio, so it's not a big deal. But I hauled it home, and in fact, as I was walking out with it, pieces of it were literally falling off. Pieces of veneer were falling off, and glue blocks, and I was trying to collect the stuff that I needed. I kept putting pieces in my pocket as I walked out the door. And I got it home. And I did a ton of research trying to find some information on these. And they're unicorns. They don't exist. I ended up restoring it. I did a complete video on this. Now, if you look, nothing on here is straight. This is wider than it is down here. The curves are different on both sides. You can see there's unevenness in these openings. That's how it came. That's how it was when I got it. After I was finished with this set, I found this one online. This is the picture. If you do research for Triad radios, and if you search and search and search, you will eventually stumble across this photograph. This is the actual radio. It looks a little different now. Perhaps. I did polish up the badge a little bit. But again, this cutout isn't straight, the sides aren't uniform, these openings aren't straight, nothing's uniform on this set. The chassis construction is as simple as it can get. It looks like it was turned out in someone's basement almost. The only thing that tells me these were manufactured is, even though these came from different parts, this one came from the Midwest somewhere, I think. This one, I don't know where its origin when the guy got it, but they came from vastly different places. But the chassis, the riveting of the tube sockets, you can tell they were manufactured in some sort of factory, but very, very crudely. Electrically, they're great. They're great little performers. They're nice little radios. But the physical assembly of these, the soldering looked professional, but the cabinet work looked like it was knocked out in someone's basement. You know, some beginning carpenter had just thrown these together. But they're just about identical proportions. Tells me that was probably somebody's stock cabinet. And I know I'm rambling a bit here, but it all has a purpose. It all has a purpose, trust me. Triad radio, okay? And I think they were in business from 1919 to 1978. 1978, they closed up shop. If you go on the internet, you're going to find Triad Electronics. You're going to find modern companies with the name Triad. Not the same people at all. There was a Triad radio show. I think it was some AM station. You're going to find a myriad of stuff Triad, but it's not this company. You've got to look for this badging. These guys made vacuum tubes. They made their own Triad brand. They made tubes for just about everybody. They made Tip Top. They made, I think it was Vimo, was one of their badges under Triad. They made them for just about every, yeah, there's another Tip Top. Tip Top, let's see what else we have here. I know they made them for Crosley. They made them for Atwater Kent. You'll find their tubes badged. There's Crosley by Triad. Just about every radio manufacturer out there bought tubes from this company that were manufactured by this company and had their branding put on the tube. Triad made tubes under license from RCA for virtually everybody. This was one of their things, that triangular box, the Triad box, and they bragged about how many they could pack in a shipping carton. Because of the shape of the box, they could get more tubes in a box per shipment. And they made pens, they made pencils, they made tube testers. I've seen Triad televisions. There's pictures of Triad televisions. They made light bulbs. They called them Bright Lamp, and they were nitrogen filled. Meltron tubes, Crosley. They made did I say pens and pencils already? They made pens, triangular shaped pens. There's a whole website out there where people are collecting these pens. They're very collectible. You'll find all kinds of stuff, and if you spend enough time on the internet, there's advertising out there from this company. They were very proud of everything they made. They have advertising on all kinds of products. You will never, or at least I have never, ever found any reference whatsoever to radios. It's obviously this company, Triad. There's no model numbers on these. They are bare bones. Like I say, they're good radios, but they were just built as cheaply as possible. For a while, I thought we might have victory sets here. During World War II, a lot of stuff was victory. They had victory records and victory everything, you know. It was for the war effort. And during the war, steel, aluminum, they were all strategic commodities. So I was thinking, well, maybe that's why the chassis are so crude. And it was very little went into them. It's thin metal. One of them doesn't even have ends on it. It's just a U-shaped piece of sheet metal with the tube sockets in it. But I couldn't find any information. Nothing. There just nothing existed. They didn't mention anything about making radios. They talk about radio tubes. There's lots and lots of advertising about how good their tubes are. But nothing. They make zero mention of ever having manufactured radios. And that brings me back to the set that's on the table right now with the 6B5. I went over to Frank's Electron Tube Data, and if you just type that in, Frank's Electron Tube Data, you'll come up with his website, and he's got data sheets on vacuum tubes. And I love his site because he'll have 2, 3, 4, I think there's one even case 5 different sets of data on the same tube by Tungsol, by RCA, by whoever, Hytron. They'll have different documents, and sometimes there's information on one that's better than the other. When I'm working on a set, I like to print out the information on a given tube so that I have it in my hand and I can make notes on the paper. I have all the RCA tube manuals, but sometimes these are just handy to have laying on the table next to you, especially when you're working on this set, as we shall see. So anyway, I looked up the 6B5, and it came up, there was a Triad data sheet. And this is the Triadine 6B5. Triad Manufacturing, Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And I got it from Frank's Electron Tube data sheets. This tube, this 6B5 6N6, was actually invented and developed by the Triad Manufacturing Company. And if you like to geek out on design data and stuff, go download this data sheet on the 6B5 because it gives you the whole thought process they put into developing this tube, the problem it was designed to solve, how they went about solving the problem. And this tube, you've got a triode here, but there's no external cathode. It ties directly to the grid of the power output side. This is like a driver. This is the power output side. The grid and the cathode between these two are tied together. There's a little bleeder resistor goes to the cathode. But they'll give you, describes the entire process of developing the tube and why it was developed, the problem they were solving, the thought process that went into it. It's a fascinating read. I geek out on this stuff. And there's a total of 11 pages of design information on this tube alone. Then there's a little piece in the back here that there's some more information on the company and some letters and so forth, to different radio manufacturers, and one from the Radio Manufacturers Association. But then I stumbled across this. And it's a little advertising blurb. There's their company down here. Check this out. A complete modern laboratory, including radio circuit development. There's your clue. Radio circuit development is maintained for cooperation with set manufacturers the world over. And to this are given services of a large staff of renowned engineers. And the light bulb went on. I think these are engineering samples. I think these were given out to prospective customers saying, here's our electrical design. What do you think of it? Do you want to build this under license with your name on it? When I was working, we made robotic equipment, if you will. They were die sorters for the semiconductor industry. We had servo motors, we had pneumatics, we had hydraulics, we had mechanical assembly, we had a myriad of items that went into our machine that we packaged. And I had people coming through the door all the time, handing me stuff, saying, here's an engineering sample for our latest power supply. Here's an engineering sample of our latest servo setup. And these manufacturers know that you're buying, hundreds of thousands of dollars of parts every year. So they come through the door and they'll hand you stuff all the time, engineering samples. I'm beginning to think that the reason these don't exist is these were never offered to the public. These never went to the public. These came out of their laboratories, probably went to a prospective guy, like they might send it to Crosley and say, try this circuit and see what you think of it. Here's our patent on it. You can build it under license if you like our set. And these cabinets were probably just quickly turned out by hand at the factory, just to have a container to ship the thing out, say, here's our product sample. Because they're so crudely built, they were obviously knocked out by hand very quickly and just sent out the door. This one even has the triangular knobs for Triad. That one has round wooden knobs. I have no idea if those are original or not. They may or may not be. But let me know what you think. Are these engineering samples, and can you come up with, if anybody can come up with documentation that says we shipped, or here's what happened, or this is the history behind these. I have spent it's probably been close to 3 years now. Every few months, something will trigger me, and I'll go on the internet and spend 2 or 3 hours until I get bleary-eyed. I keep coming across the same information I've always found. I find it on different sources. And again, you're going to find the picture of that radio from eBay. That exact radio will turn up. That photograph right here, when you see this photograph with the little red thing on the top, that is that actual set right there. This is the photograph that was on eBay, and this is the one that persists on the internet. And it was as bad as this set. You can see the top's all wavy, and it had a big swale in the top of it. It was all delaminated. You can't see the sides in this eBay picture, but you can see the veneer is missing on over here on the edge. It was literally falling to pieces. In fact, the plywood that's behind here, in shipping it to me, most of this grill work fell apart in little tiny chunks of wood that fell out, and I meticulously glued it all back together and put a fresh veneer on the top. But this speaker grill piece, and it wasn't that the guy didn't ship it well, it was just so fragile just in handling all the little wooden pieces, plywood pieces. It wasn't basically 3 plies. It was a top veneer, a back veneer, and then a 1/4 inch thick piece of wood. It was really, really cheesy plywood. 3 plies, 2 veneer layers, and a central layer. Well, the central layer had all cracked from aging and was literally falling out of the veneer. There were 2 strips of veneer with nothing between it in this area when I got it. Built very cheaply and not intended to last. But after reading this, I think these were engineering samples. I think this is a set they designed, in their laboratory. They came up with an efficient design, minimum parts count that worked well. Threw it together on a quickly made chassis, and they probably had a stock of these boxes for the different ones that they built, cut them out quickly and shipped them out and said, here, what do you think? That's where I'm going with it at this point, because there are no schematics online. I have never found one. I've never found any documentation. As proud as these guys were of everything they built, and if you go online and do research, you'll find pictures of their pens and their pencils and their tube testers and their televisions. I have yet, after 2.5 probably years of searching, every once in a while I jump on the Gargler, I have never seen a photograph, a schematic, or any mention of these sets. And again, this is the only picture I can find online, and that's the set that I bought here. That's from eBay. So that's it. I'm hoping that someone out there has more information. That's what this is all. That's what this video is all about. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. I've rambled on long enough here. Probably tired of my voice. I'm the Radio Mechanic. Thanks for watching, and to anyone who responds, thank you for your time. Stay well. See you soon.